Tonight, you'll drift into the dim candlelight of the 14th century, where the air hums with prayer, panic, and the faint, impossible hope that you, somehow, might survive the Black Plague. You breathe in slowly, and the scent of damp straw fills your lungs. It's not unpleasant, just medieval. The night outside your small wooden house is oddly quiet, except for the muffled ringing of a church bell somewhere across the valley. One toll, then two. You lose count after 7, not because there are too many, but because your mind starts to wander the way it does when you're almost asleep. You've been living in this village your whole life, or at least it feels that way, since you can't remember a time when mud wasn't your default flooring. The walls of your home are plastered with a mix of wattle, daub, and stubborn hope. A single candle flickers beside you, and you think, perhaps with misplaced optimism, that the candle might outlive everyone you know. Welcome to 1348, the year that Europe took one long, unfortunate sneeze and didn't quite recover. But don't worry, you're here for a reason. You're going to try to survive this. Most won't, but you might. Maybe. Statistically speaking, it's not looking good. But hey, miracles are fashionable this century. And before we really get into it, go ahead and like this video quietly with the same reverence you'd offer a saint's relic. Leave a gentle comment below. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I imagine some of you are already in bed, wrapped in soft blankets, breathing slower with each word. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You're awake at dawn, which sounds impressive until you remember dawn happens whether you like it or not. A rooster screams outside, offended by the concept of peace. You stretch, and the rough wool of your blanket scratches your skin in that familiar, homespun way. Outside, the village moves at the speed of bread rising. The baker's apprentice, he's about 10 and perpetually covered in flour, already drags a sack of barley toward the oven. You pass him as you step into the morning mist, your breath puffing into small clouds that vanish before you can catch them. The market square is smaller than you remember. Perhaps you've grown, or perhaps the walls are closing in with the smell of unwashed humanity. A man sells leeches, claiming they'll balance your humors and ward off the sickness spreading across the next county. You nod politely, even though you suspect that balancing your humors is just medieval code for losing a lot of blood and hoping for the best. One historical fact: in 1348, the Black Death entered England through the port of Melcombe Regis, likely carried by fleas on rats that hitched a ride on merchant ships from France. The first victims fell ill within days, and the panic spread faster than the disease itself. You overhear a rumor that bad air is to blame, that invisible clouds of pestilence drift through towns, punishing the sinful. You pull your cloak tighter, as if wool could protect against divine disappointment. In the middle of the square, a priest shouts prayers into the wind. His voice cracks halfway through Kyrie eleison. But nobody notices. They're too busy clutching charms, herbs, and each other's hands. You pass a woman selling dried rosemary, whispering that it can purify the air. You buy a small bundle, tucking it behind your ear because that's what everyone else is doing. Scholars centuries later will argue whether these rituals mattered, but tonight, they feel like armor. A soft drizzle begins. It smells faintly of wood smoke and sheep. Somewhere nearby, a cat hisses at a rat, and you feel a quiet satisfaction watching nature attempt pest control. The cat misses, of course. Cats in the Middle Ages are all attitude, no aim. As the day goes on, the mood of the village sinks like dough in a cold oven. People whisper about bodies being buried beyond the hill, and you notice the priest doesn't ring the church bell anymore. Perhaps he's saving his strength. By late afternoon, the sky turns the color of wet parchment. You wander back home, stepping over puddles that reflect the thatched roofs like a painter's dream. Inside, you hang your cloak by the door and sit near the hearth. The fire crackles weakly, like an old friend clearing its throat. You reach for your cup, a clay mug filled with ale that tastes suspiciously like someone's second attempt. Water isn't safe, and ale is the only thing keeping your insides relatively civilized. You sip, sigh, and listen to the faint sound of the world unraveling outside. Scholars still debate whether people truly understood how the plague spread. Some blamed sin, others the stars, and a few, those odd, quietly brilliant ones, suspected it might have something to do with the rats. You don't know who's right, but you do know this. The rats are multiplying faster than the priests can pray. Night returns, heavy and damp. You lie down, pulling your blanket over your shoulders, and you whisper to yourself that you'll probably make it through this day. You probably won't, but optimism pairs well with exhaustion. Sleep comes slowly, carrying the soft sound of bells in the distance. Somewhere a child coughs. Somewhere else a candle burns low. The world holds its breath. Morning again. The light that spills through your window feels suspiciously uncommitted, as if even the sun isn't sure it wants to show up today. You sit up, bones clicking like medieval castanets. Outside, a thin mist clings to the village like gossip. You pull on your boots, which are less leather craftsmanship and more collection of regrets held together by string. The streets are quieter than yesterday. You notice it immediately, the kind of quiet that settles in when too many people have run out of words. The butcher's stall is closed. The baker hasn't lit his oven. Even the rooster sounds uncertain, crowing once and then giving up, as if embarrassed by his own optimism. You make your way toward the river, thinking fresh water might lift your spirits, or at least rinse off the layer of worry that seems permanent now. The river is still, the surface reflecting gray clouds and the wooden bridge like a painting someone forgot to finish. A man stands by the water, muttering something about lepers and the wrath of God. He's holding a mask made of linen stuffed with herbs, cloves, lavender, maybe mint. It's oddly bird-like with a long beak. You think it looks ridiculous, but secretly you admire the creativity. One historical fact: the plague doctor outfit, complete with its bird-like mask, became iconic during the later outbreaks of the Black Death, designed to filter bad air with aromatic herbs. It wasn't particularly effective, but it was a memorable look. The man notices your stare and mutters, "Keeps the miasma away." You nod solemnly. You don't have the heart to tell him that he mostly looks like an anxious heron. You walk further downstream, where a washerwoman hums a song that sounds older than the river itself. She dips linen into the water, wrings it out, and sets it on a rock to dry. Her hands are cracked but steady. You imagine she's done this her whole life. War, famine, plague. Life continues somehow. A soft wind ripples across the grass, bringing the faint smell of rosemary again. You touch the sprig behind your ear, wondering if superstition has a scent. As you walk back, you pass a line of carts headed toward the edge of the village. You already know what they carry, but you don't look. It feels wrong to stare at what you can't fix. A monk walks beside them, murmuring prayers that vanish into the damp air. An obscure fact: in some towns, flagellants, men who whip themselves publicly to atone for the world's sins, wandered from village to village, singing hymns and shedding blood in hope of mercy. You've heard rumors they're coming this way. You wonder if they'll stop for ale. The day stretches long and thin. You help a neighbor mend a fence, not because the fence matters, but because doing something keeps your mind from unraveling. You joke lightly that at this rate, the fence will outlive you both. He laughs, then stops, as if laughter might invite bad luck. By evening, you're back home again. You light the candle, its flame flickering against the rough wall like a trembling heartbeat. The air smells faintly of smoke and damp wool. You notice the silence again, the kind that wraps around you like heavy cloth. You sit by the fire, picking at a piece of bread so stale it could double as a weapon. You imagine future historians debating whether anyone actually enjoyed medieval bread, or if it was just a long-term jaw exercise. The fire pops. A single ember leaps out, landing near your foot. You watch it glow, dim, and die, and you think, perhaps, this is what hope looks like when it learns to be quiet. Outside, the wind picks up. It whispers through the thatch, low and persistent, as if carrying a message you're too tired to translate. You remember the street you walked past earlier, the one that smelled faintly of rosemary. The silent now. You think of the washerwoman, her cracked hands, her song. You hope she's still humming. Historians still debate whether quarantine actually worked in the 14th century. Some towns sealed their gates and survived. Others perished despite isolation. You wonder if it mattered, or if fate was simply taking attendance. You lie down again, listening to the rain tapping gently against the window. It's almost soothing, like the world apologizing for something it can't undo. You close your eyes. The candle guttered out hours ago, but the darkness feels softer now. You breathe in, smell damp earth, smoke, rosemary, and faintly, the sweetness of survival. Tomorrow will come. It always does until it doesn't. But for now, you're still here, and that's enough. You wake to the sound of footsteps on the road, slow, uneven, the rhythm of someone carrying more than they should. Morning light pushes through the shutters in thin, gold slices, cutting through the smoky air of your one-room home. You sit up, momentarily forgetting what century you're in, until your back reminds you with a polite creak. You open the door, and the world smells faintly of ash and time. The air has shifted somehow. Less noise, fewer voices. Just the dull clop of a cart will somewhere beyond the cottages. You walk out, pulling your cloak around your shoulders. The priest is standing in the square again, but this time he's not preaching. He's just looking. His face is pale and still, as if someone has blown out the flame behind his eyes. You greet him with a small nod. He returns it, then walks away without a word. There's a new sign nailed to the church door. By order of the Lord's bailiff, all homes of the afflicted must mark their doors. You read it twice because words like that feel heavier the second time around. You glance back toward your own cottage, its rough wooden door blank. For now, a flock of crows lands on the chapel roof. One drops a feather, which drifts lazily toward the ground, landing near your boot. You stare at it, then laugh quietly to yourself. Bad omen, you mutter, but at least it's punctual. One historical fact. In 1349, entire English villages were abandoned as the plague swept inland, leaving fields untended and markets empty. Chroniclers wrote of houses falling in upon themselves for want of care. You start walking down the main road, the same one where you bought rosemary days ago. The air still carries its ghostly fragrance, mixed now with wood smoke and the metallic tang of the river. You pass the mill. Its wheel turns slowly, creaking under the lazy current. Nobody's there. You peek inside, see half-ground flour, a wooden scoop left mid-task. The world has a way of pausing itself when fear takes over. By midday, you reach the edge of the village, where the fields spread out like a wrinkled blanket. Sheep graze near the hedgerows, oblivious to human misery. You envy them a little. Their only concern is grass, and grass never gets infected. You sit under an oak tree, your back against its rough bark. The breeze is soft today, the kind that feels like it's checking in on you. You close your eyes and let it brush against your face. Somewhere, a distant church bell rings again. Slow, steady, resigned. You think about leaving, just walking until the road runs out, finding a new place untouched by all this. You've heard of towns closing their gates, turning strangers away. You imagine yourself at one of those gates, holding your rosemary, trying to look harmless. You wonder if that would be enough. An obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions of Europe, people carried small bouquets called posies or nosegays to ward off the bad air. They believed that pleasant smells could block disease. Centuries later, the children's rhyme, "Ring o' Roses," would echo that practice, though scholars still debate whether it truly referenced the plague. You rise and walk back toward home, tracing your fingers along the hedges, feeling the cool dew. Your fingertips come away damp, and you think it's oddly comforting, proof that the world hasn't dried up completely. Back in the village, you find a few others gathered near the well. They're quiet, their faces drawn and thin. You share water, silence, and a mutual understanding that words can't fix anything now. One man mentions that a traveling merchant passed through last week, saying the sickness has reached London. You pretend not to care, though your stomach knots like a sailor's rope. That night, you sit by the fire again, staring at the embers. You find yourself counting them, as though each glowing spark represents someone who might still be alive somewhere. You lose count after 20. You murmur a half-hearted prayer, not out of faith but habit. You smile faintly as you say Amen, as if to reassure the ceiling beams that you're still trying. Before lying down, you whisper to the air, "I'll make it through tomorrow." Then, quieter, probably, the candle gutters, sputters, then steadies again. You watch its flame bow and straighten, like it's breathing with you. Outside, an owl calls once. The sound stretches through the stillness like thread. You pull the blanket close, inhale the scent of smoke and thyme, and drift, slowly, toward sleep. You dream of open fields, green and endless, and the sound of bees, the good kind of buzzing that means summer. When you wake, it takes you a moment to realize it isn't summer. It's gray again, that specific medieval gray that looks permanent. You pull on your boots and step outside. A cold wind snakes through the lane, tugging at your cloak. The church bell rings twice before stopping, as if it's lost its enthusiasm. You walk toward the outskirts, where the air feels fresher, though you tell yourself that's probably psychological. The hedges along the road are thick with dew. Somewhere beyond them, someone coughs. A deep, rattling sound. You don't investigate. You've learned that curiosity, while noble in scholars, is hazardous in peasants. A pair of boys chase each other through the mud, their laughter high and fragile. It's the first laughter you've heard in days. You smile, half at them and half at the absurdity of finding joy in the middle of disaster. You pass a cart filled with bundles of cloth. The driver nods at you, eyes shadowed under his hood. You notice he's wearing gloves, though it's not that cold. You keep walking. The less you know, the longer you sleep at night. One historical fact. In many towns during the plague years, trade nearly collapsed. Guilds lost members so rapidly that skilled crafts died out, and surviving workers found themselves in sudden demand. You consider becoming a blacksmith, just in case civilization restarts next week. At the edge of the field, you see smoke curling from a cottage chimney. The smell of stew drifts toward you, barley, maybe leeks. Your stomach reminds you that survival isn't just avoiding disease. It's also remembering to eat. You knock softly, and a woman's voice invites you in. Her house is small, clean, almost cheerful. She stirs a pot over the fire, humming a tune you don't recognize. You exchange polite words about the weather, which is the safest topic in a world collapsing under pestilence. She offers you a bowl and you hesitate, then accept. The stew is thin but warm, and the warmth feels like mercy. She tells you her husband left for the city weeks ago and hasn't returned. You both pretend you don't know what that means. You thank her and leave, stepping back into the wind. You tuck that moment away, the stew, the firelight, the kindness, as though it might protect you later. An obscure fact: some medieval households burned juniper branches indoors, believing the smoke would cleanse the air. Others hung garlands of rue and wormwood from door frames. No one was sure if it worked, but the scent clung to history like perfume on old cloth. By afternoon, you find yourself walking toward the river again. The washerwoman is gone. Only her wooden tub remains, half filled with rainwater. You dip your fingers in, feel the chill, then watch the ripples fade. You look up and see storm clouds rolling in, dark, slow, heavy. The wind picks up, carrying the faintest scent of rain. You tilt your face upward and let the first drop hit your skin. Feels clean, almost holy. Back in the village, you help a neighbor gather firewood. You don't talk much, just share the rhythm of lifting and stacking. At one point he says quietly, "When this is over, I'll plant barley again." You nod. You don't ask when it will be over. That feels like tempting fate. Evening comes softly, like a secret. The rain begins, steady and polite. You sit by your hearth, listening to its steady percussion on the roof. The sound is almost musical, a lullaby of water and wind. You remember the woman's stew, the scent of juniper, the boys' laughter in the mud. You hold on to those details because they feel like proof that life still insists on existing. Historians still debate whether the plague made people more religious or more resigned. Some records show bursts of faith, others despair. You suspect it did both, depending on the weather and the number of funerals that week. You stare into the fire. The flames sway lazily, painting your walls gold. The warmth seeps into your bones, and for a brief, fragile moment, you believe the worst might be passing. You whisper to yourself, almost smiling, "You'll make it through this day." Then, with a quiet laugh, "Probably." Outside, the rain keeps singing on the roof, steady and patient, as the world tries to remember how to breathe. Morning arrives in silence, but not peace. The rain has stopped, leaving the ground slick and shining. Mist curls low between the cottages, softening the hard edges of the world. You breathe it in and it tastes faintly of wood smoke and wet earth. A rooster crows somewhere, late and unbothered. You almost laugh. Even the livestock are tired of this century. You step outside, boots sinking slightly into the mud. The air is cool, but the sky shows the faintest promise of sun. A pale ribbon of light slips across the horizon, as though the day is testing its courage. Someone has left bread by the well, small, round loaves wrapped in coarse linen. You recognize the pattern, the mark of the Reeves wife, who bakes for the sick when she can. It's her way of pretending she has control. Everyone needs a ritual, even if it's just flour and mercy. You take one loaf, careful not to touch the others. The crust is rough, the inside still warm. You tear a piece and eat slowly, letting each bite dissolve before swallowing. Hunger has become a kind of prayer now, slow, deliberate, and grateful. Historical aside, during the worst years of the plague, survivors often practiced silent charity, leaving food at doorsteps or wells without speaking or making eye contact. Words, they thought, could carry contagion. So they spoke less, but perhaps listened more. Down the lane, you see two figures working near the churchyard. They're digging, not talking. You watch them for a while because it feels wrong to look away. The sound of the shovels, dull, rhythmic, carries through the fog like a metronome of grief. You whisper a line you once heard from a traveling friar. The living bury the dead, and in doing so, remind the earth that it still has hands. By mid-morning, the sun finally breaks through the mist, timid but golden. The village looks different in that light. Less doomed, more like a place that's just waiting for laughter to remember its way back. You sit near the well, your cloak spread beneath you, and watch the steam rise from the rooftops. The air hums faintly with insects, a sign that not everything has gone quiet. From somewhere nearby comes the faint plucking of a lute. The tune is simple, fragile, and slightly off-key, like a memory trying to stay alive. You follow the sound and find a boy perched on a wall, eyes half closed, fingers clumsy but determined. You listen without interrupting. When he finishes, you clap once. He startles, then grins shyly. "I only know that one," he says. "It's enough," you answer. "It sounds like hope." He laughs, uncertain whether you mean it, and runs off down the lane. The music lingers long after he's gone. Cultural note: in many plague-stricken towns, musicians kept playing even as crowds vanished. Some performed for empty squares, believing that sound itself could keep spirits from leaving entirely. Centuries later, chroniclers called them the stubborn songs of the dying age. You stay there for a while, watching sunlight dance on puddles. It's strange how the smallest things, light, sound, the smell of damp hay, can feel like rebellion. You start to think maybe survival isn't about luck or faith, but endurance. Just staying long enough for beauty to come back. As the day fades, you gather wild herbs near the hedgerow, thyme, fennel, and a few leaves of something you can't name but smells like green rain. You hang them in bundles near the hearth, the scent sharp and clean. That night you make a small stew, water, herbs, a few sad vegetables. You eat it slowly, half for nourishment, half for the rhythm of it. Spoon, bowl, breath. Spoon, bowl, breath. The fire crackles gently. You lean back, eyes half closed. Your hands are rough, your cloak smells of rain. And yet, somehow you feel calm. You think about how the world keeps spinning, indifferent but not unkind. You think about the boy's song, the woman's stew, the bread at the well. Each thing small but enough to fill a day. You whisper, "You'll make it through this night." Then softer, smiling at your own superstition, "Probably." The candle burns low. Outside, the crickets begin. A chorus of ordinary life returning, note by trembling note. You wake to birdsong, the kind that sounds half hopeful, half confused. Morning again somehow. The hearth has gone cold, leaving faint trails of ash curling through the air like forgotten prayers. You stretch, every joint protesting like an old gate, and pull your cloak tighter. You're still alive, which lately feels like an achievement worthy of applause. Or at least a polite nod from the universe. Outside, the world glows gold and soft, that rare hour when the day hasn't quite decided if it's going to be cruel. You step into the quiet lane, and for a moment you could almost believe things are normal again. Chickens scratching, someone drawing water, the faint smell of yeast and smoke. But then you pass the churchyard, and reality drifts back in like fog. Fresh mounds of earth, uneven and too many. A few flowers laid with careful distance, as if grief itself could be contagious. You keep walking. The road stretches out beyond the cottages, turning toward the low hills where the air feels cleaner, or maybe just emptier. Halfway up, you find a small shrine beside the path. A wooden cross draped in faded cloth and dried herbs. Someone's written a prayer on parchment, tacked to the wood with a sliver of iron. The ink has blurred, but you can still make out a few words. Keep the breath steady, keep the hands clean, keep the faith quiet. You smile faintly. Faith quiet. Yes, that seems to be the only kind left. Historical fact. During the height of the Black Death, many travelers left small charms or written prayers along roadsides. These were not official church relics, but pocket shrines, part superstition, part comfort. You pause a while to breathe in the air. It smells of time and something faintly metallic. A hawk circles above the fields, a perfect spiral of patience. Then you hear a voice behind you. Heading to the next village? You turn. It's the reeve, the one who collects grain, gossip, and everyone's last ounce of patience. His face is lean, his expression even leaner. Maybe, you say. He nods. Don't linger near the marsh road. They say the air there's thick with it. He doesn't say what it is. He doesn't need to. He offers you a sprig of lavender. For the smell, he mutters. You take it. Or the illusion of safety, you say. He almost smiles. Either will do. The lavender scent is sharp, like sunlight pretending to be medicine. You tuck it into your sleeve, feeling its small weight like a talisman. As you walk on, the road narrows, the hedges growing wild. Butterflies drift between the branches, pale, delicate, oblivious to human disasters. It's strange, you think, how the natural world refuses to mourn with you. The grass keeps growing, the bees keep working, the clouds keep practicing their slow choreography. You stop to rest beneath an oak. His bark feels ancient and rough, like something that remembers better times. You pick up a fallen acorn and roll it in your palm. Weird historical tidbit. Some medieval physicians believed acorns could draw out sickness from the air if left near doorways or worn in small pouches. Others swore by onions or by carrying emeralds. None of it worked, of course, but belief itself was medicine. A squirrel darts nearby, tail twitching, eyes bright with judgment. You sigh. Don't worry, you tell it. I'm not after your lunch. It stares, unmoved. You add, honestly, I'm barely after my own. It leaves, unimpressed. You suppose that counts as a victory. You lie back against the roots, closing your eyes for a moment. The wind brushes your face, and somewhere in the distance, bells ring. Faint, uneven. Maybe a mass for the dead. Or maybe the sound is just memory carrying itself on the air. Historians still debate whether those constant tolls were comfort or torment, whether they soothed the survivors or simply reminded them how many had stopped listening. You drift half into a nap, half into a waking dream. You imagine walking through an empty marketplace, stalls full of nothing but silence. You imagine someone sweeping dust from a doorway that will never open again. And yet, even in that dream, you notice beauty. The pattern of sunlight through lattice windows, the curve of a painted jug, a cat curled on a step. You open your eyes again. The world hasn't changed, only the light has shifted. That's the secret, isn't it? Nothing gets better. It just gets gentler with time. You rise, brush off your cloak, and continue down the path. Somewhere beyond the next hill, there will be another village. Maybe smaller, maybe stranger, maybe still breathing. And you'll keep walking toward it because what else is there to do? A thought drifts in, quiet as evening. Surviving isn't about being clever or brave. It's about being too stubborn to stop. The lavender in your sleeve brushes your wrist. You take it out, hold it close to your nose, and whisper, "Still here." Then you start down the hill, the path golden in the slanting light. The wind carries the faintest scent of bread. Somewhere ahead, someone's still baking. And for a moment, that feels like enough reason to keep going. You follow the scent of bread. It threads through the hills like a promise, faint but insistent, until the path bends into a narrow lane lined with low stone cottages. The roofs sag with age, moss thick as velvet. A few windows are shuttered, but one is open, and from it drifts that unmistakable aroma. Yeast, heat, life. A small mercy. You pause at the threshold. The door stands half open, and a woman kneads dough on a broad wooden table. Her sleeves are rolled, her hands dusted with flour like soft snow. She looks up and nods, not startled. In times like these, strangers are either threats or ghosts. You must look like neither. "Don't just stand there," she says. "Come in before the air steals all the warmth." You step inside, blinking in the golden half-light. The hearth burns low, and a pot simmers lazily beside it. The smell is heavenly, barley and herbs, with something faintly sweet. "Trade?" she asks, kneading without looking at you. You offer a pouch of dried thyme and 2 onions. She glances, approves, and tears a piece of dough for you. You bite into it soft and steaming. There's silence between you, the kind that feels companionable. After a moment, she says, "Used to be a baker's wife. Now just a baker." You nod. "You bake for the living?" She shrugs. "Someone has to." A beat. "Someone has to remind the oven it's still wanted." You almost laugh quietly. There it is, the dry humor of the doomed. Historical fact: bread remained a crucial survival staple during the plague years, though grain shortages were common. Some towns even appointed official bakers to keep ovens going so villagers wouldn't crowd together. It was less about hunger, more about keeping the rhythm of daily life. Knead, bake, breathe. You sit at the table while she works, the sound of her hands rhythmic and slow. "I heard the next town's empty," she says after a while. "They say the rats walked away first." You nod. "You believe that?" She smirks. "I believe rats have more sense than most people." You can't argue with that. Weird tidbit. In parts of Germany and Flanders, people left bowls of milk at crossroads to appease the rats, thinking it might keep them from homes. Like a bizarre truce between species. The baker shapes another loaf, hums an old lullaby under her breath. It's about bread that never burns and nights that never end. You've never heard it before, but it feels familiar, like something your grandmother might have sung if she'd been born centuries too early. You ask where she learned it. She says, "From the quiet. It teaches if you let it." That line sits with you. You realize that surviving the plague isn't just about avoiding death. It's about finding new teachers. Silence, patience, hunger. When the bread's ready, she breaks 1 loaf in half and gives you the larger piece. "You'll need it," she says simply. You thank her, wrap it in cloth, and step outside again. The air feels cooler, cleaner. The sky has turned pale violet, evening coming softly, the day exhaling at last. You glance back once. The woman stands at her doorway watching you go. The smoke from her chimney curls upward, joining the quiet dusk. "Keep the oven warm," you call gently. She smiles faintly, only thing that still listens. You walk on until the path fades into open field, the bread still warm in your hands. The world hums faintly around you. Insects, wind, the low breathing of earth itself. It's almost peaceful. Almost. Night falls in layers. First, the color drains from the sky, blue to gray, gray to nothing. Then the sounds soften. Footsteps, birds, even your breath. Then comes the weight of it, the gentle surrender of everything that lives. You find shelter beneath the ruins of a chapel half swallowed by ivy. It's beautiful in that way only abandoned things are. Quiet, resigned, unwilling to complain. The door creaks open easily, as though the building still remembers hospitality. Inside, moonlight filters through the broken roof, painting silver across the stone floor. You sit on the cold bench and unwrap the bread. It's gone stiff but still fragrant. You eat slowly, crumbs falling like tiny snowflakes. Every bite feels like defiance. Somewhere above, a nightjar calls. The sound echoes through the rafters. Lonely but not unpleasant. You look at the faded wall paintings. Saints and angels with peeled faces, their eyes soft with centuries. One corner shows Saint Roch, the saint of plague victims, his hand raised in blessing. His dog, barely visible, holds a loaf of bread in its mouth. You chuckle under your breath. Seems bread gets all the credit again. Historical fact: Saint Roch's legend tells that during the plague, he survived by hiding in the woods, where a dog brought him bread each day. That story spread fast, a miracle of carbs and canine loyalty. You break the last of your loaf and lay a crumb on the floor. "For luck," you murmur. Or dogs. The air in the chapel is cold, but dry. You settle against the wall, cloak pulled tight, the stone pressing cool against your back. Sleep doesn't come easily these days, but this place feels kind, or at least indifferent in a comforting way. Outside, wind sighs through the ivy. It sounds almost like breath. You think about the baker, the boy with the lute, the lavender in your sleeve. You think about how each of them, in their own small way, gave you something invisible but necessary. Cultural tidbit: some medieval towns believed ivy wards off airborne mischief. Evil carried on the wind. People planted it near doors, trusting it to catch bad spirits like cobwebs. You run your hand over the leaves beside you. Smooth, cool, alive. "Do your job?" you whisper, half smiling. "I've got enough mischief of my own." The wind presses softly against the door, and you imagine it answering, amused. You lie down on the bench, cloak wrapped around your shoulders. The candle you lit earlier burns low beside you. Its light flickers across the stone saints, making them seem to breathe. Historians still debate whether people in plague years actually believed miracles were possible, or whether they just acted like they did because pretending was easier than despair. You like that idea. Pretending as prayer. Hope as performance. Your eyelids grow heavy. You start counting breaths, not to sleep faster, but to hear something steady in a world that isn't. 1 breath, 2, 3. The candle wavers. The ivy rustles. In that half space between wakefulness and dreams, you imagine walking through a city untouched by plague. Bells ringing for weddings instead of funerals. bread baking for joy instead of necessity, a child laughing because it's Tuesday, and nothing hurts. You smile, eyes closed. You probably won't make it through this century. You whisper to yourself, amused. But you're making it through this night. And somehow that feels like enough. You wake to the sound of dripping water. Not rain. Just dew slipping from the chapel's ruined roof, landing rhythmically beside you. The candle's gone out, leaving a thin curl of wax hardened like a frozen tear. The morning light filters in gray and blue. The air smells of wet ivy and old stone. That sweet, green scent of places left alone too long. You sit up slowly, bones reluctant, eyes still heavy. Outside, a thin mist clings to the earth, softening the landscape until everything looks like memory. You eat the last of the bread crust, chewing quietly, as though not to wake the air. Your lavender sprig, tucked into your sleeve, has dried overnight, brittle now, but still fragrant. You crush it between your fingers and breathe in the scent. It's faint but enough. When you step outside, the sky is low and pale. The hills beyond the chapel are scattered with sheep. They're bleeding distant and oddly reassuring. Life still has the nerve to continue. You start walking again, no real plan, just forward. The path dips into a shallow valley where the grass glows gold in the slanting light. Bees hum over thistles. A stream whispers somewhere nearby. It sounds like a lullaby trying to remember the words. After a while, you see smoke in the distance, not black and thick like burning, but thin and domestic. A hearth smoke, maybe. You follow it, drawn by instinct or foolishness. They're the same thing these days. The source turns out to be a small cottage perched near the water, its roof half thatch, half miracle. Chickens scatter as you approach, muttering indignantly. The door is open. Always a good sign or a bad one, never in between. You call out softly, "Hello." A woman's voice answers from inside. "If you're bringing trouble, leave it at the stream." You smile. "Just curiosity." She replies, "That's worse." You step in anyway. The air inside smells of herbs, sharp and sweet, something between medicine and forest. Bundles hang from the rafters. Sage, rosemary, dried roses, things you can't name. The woman stands over a small table grinding leaves with a pestle. Her hair is gray, her eyes sharp. She looks like she hasn't slept since the last good year. "Herbalist?" you ask. "Midwife," she corrects. "But there's not much birthing lately, so I mend what's left instead." Historical fact. Many medieval midwives became informal plague healers. Their knowledge of herbs and anatomy made them both essential and suspect. The church tolerated them barely. You glance around. Bottles, jars, a bowl of ashes. "Does it work?" you ask. She shrugs. "Sometimes. But hope works better." You nod. "And which herb is that?" She smirks. "If I could grow it, I'd be a saint." You laugh softly. The sound startles both of you. Feels strange, but good. She pours a bit of hot liquid into a wooden cup. "Drink," she says. "It won't cure you, but it'll make you forget to worry for an hour." You take a cautious sip. It's bitter, then oddly warm. You feel it spread through your chest, slow and steady, like calm disguised as flavor. Weird tidbit. In plague years, some healers sold comfort tonics made from rose petals, honey, and crushed pearls. No one could afford the pearls, but people liked the idea of drinking luxury while the world collapsed. You sit quietly while she works. The air hums with a sleepy rhythm. Pestle, kettle, breath. "People still come to you?" you ask. "Sometimes," she says. Mostly for company. The dying talk more than the living. Maybe they've stopped caring who listens. You look at her hands. Steady, lined, stained green from herbs. You're not afraid? She pauses, then smiles faintly. Of what? Death's just the next patient. You like her immediately. When you leave, she gives you a small pouch tied with red string. For the air, she says. Hang it near your heart. What's in it? She grins. Mostly lies, but good ones. You thank her, and she nods once, as if that's enough. Outside, the stream murmurs. You kneel to refill your flask, watching the ripples scatter like silver threads. You catch your reflection, tired, older, but still present. That's what survival looks like. A face you keep recognizing. You whisper to the water. Still here. The stream, obliging as ever, doesn't disagree. You walk until the sun leans low, bleeding into gold again. The road widens into what was once a market square. Cobblestones half buried in grass, wooden stalls empty except for ghosts of trade. A faded sign creaks in the breeze. Ale and news. Neither, you suspect, is in stock. You wander through, the sound of your footsteps echoing faintly. The silence isn't unfriendly, just vast, like the world exhaling after centuries of chatter. At the square's edge stands an inn, its door hanging slightly crooked. The painted sign above the door shows a fox holding a mug. You wonder if it used to be funny. Inside, the air smells faintly of dust and old ale. Tables overturned, chairs missing legs. A cat lies on the counter, stretched in regal disinterest. You bow slightly. Your kingdom remains intact. Yawns, not impressed. Behind the counter, a barrel still half full. You pour a cup, stale but drinkable. You sip slowly, savoring the faint fizz of a life that once bubbled brighter. Historical fact: many inns and taverns closed during the Black Death, but a few stayed open as refuges for travelers, often run by families who simply never left. Some chroniclers noted that beer survived longer than courage. You sit by the cold hearth. Outside, wind moves through the shutters with a sound like tired conversation. You let it speak. After a while, you notice faint carvings on the wall. Names, initials, small drawings of cups and stars. Messages left by hands that no longer exist. You trace one with your fingertip. Eleanor plus T. Under it, a line in Latin. You translate softly. What is left is enough. You smile. Eleanor. You whisper. You were right. Cultural note. Many travelers during plague years left inscriptions like this in inns and churches. Not for fame, but for proof. Small written prayers that said, I was here. I breathed once. Remember that. You light a candle stub from your pack. The small flame casts long shadows that sway like dancers. The cat hops down and curls beside your foot. Its warmth a quiet miracle. You reach down and scratch its ear. We're both survivors, you tell it. Congratulations. Purrs, maybe approving, maybe indifferent. Outside, the moon rises pale and round, reflected in the abandoned mugs and glass shards scattered around. You look at it and think how it hasn't changed. The same moon watched the first cities rise. The same moon watched this one fall. Continuity disguised as comfort. Historians still debate whether survivors of the plague truly felt lucky, or simply too tired to call it anything else. You wake in the inn to pale light slipping through the shutters. The cat is gone. The cup on the table holds a half-inch of ale, gone flat. Everything smells faintly of yesterday. Dust, smoke, and something warm you can't name. For a moment you lie still, staring at the rafters, watching cobwebs move slightly in the draft. You could stay here forever, you think. Just sleep, wake, and listen to the silence breathing around you. But the road waits, patient as always. You gather your things, sling your cloak around your shoulders, and step outside. The air has that new morning crispness, like cold linen on bare skin. Dew glitters on the grass. Somewhere nearby, a stream murmurs, the sound of persistence disguised as background noise. You start walking again. The hills ahead glow gold, the path winding lazily through them. The world looks as if it's been washed overnight, softer, quieter, almost clean. You pass a field where wildflowers have taken over what was once farmland. Rows of lavender, foxglove, and tall, swaying grass. Bees hum between the petals, utterly unbothered by history. Historical fact. In many plague-struck regions, abandoned fields became meadows within a few years. Fewer people meant fewer hands to till the soil. Nature reclaimed the silence quickly. Chroniclers described these as the flowering of sorrow. You walk through one such meadow now. The air smells like honey and damp earth. You pause to touch a stalk of foxglove, delicate bells swaying in the wind. You remember hearing that it's poisonous in large doses. Then again, so is despair. Further ahead, a small wooden cross stands by the roadside. At its base, someone's tied a bundle of herbs and a piece of faded ribbon, a token of memory or guilt. You kneel briefly, not in prayer exactly, just acknowledgement. The earth deserves to be noticed sometimes. As you rise, you notice movement in the distance. Two figures walking slowly along the ridge, cloaked and hooded. You hesitate. Strangers are rarer now, and not always welcome. But they're heading the same way, and curiosity, as always, is stronger than caution. When you finally meet, you realize they're a pair. A man and a girl, perhaps his daughter. The man nods curtly. The girl watches you openly, her eyes bright with the kind of curiosity that hasn't yet learned to hide. "Road's quiet," he says. "Too quiet," you answer. He nods again. "We're going north. They say fewer dead there." You smile faintly. They say that about everywhere. The girl holds something in her hands. A small wooden bird, carved roughly but lovingly. She notices you looking. "It flies when you throw it," she says proudly. You grin. "Does it really?" She shrugs. "It pretends." You like her immediately. They move on, the man cautious, the girl skipping ahead, the wooden bird clutched tight. You watch them until they fade into the shimmering air. Historians still debate whether survivors of the plague traveled out of faith or sheer restlessness, whether they were fleeing death or simply following motion itself. You walk on until you reach a rise where the world spreads wide below. Fields, a ribbon of road, a cluster of cottages near a river. Smoke rises from a few chimneys. It looks peaceful, almost too peaceful, like a memory that's pretending to be real. You descend slowly. The road narrows again, the river whispering beside it. A heron lifts from the reeds, wings slow and wide, like time itself stretching. You watch it go, the sound of water carrying its echo. Then you smile, faint and dry. "Show off," you mutter. The world doesn't answer, but it seems to approve. The river follows you like a friend who prefers not to talk. Its voice is steady, a low murmur under the wind. You walk along its bank until the sun sinks behind the trees and everything turns to copper and blue. You find a narrow bridge, wood warped with age, planks creaking under your weight. On the other side stands a cottage, its thatch patched with reeds. Light glows through the cracks, soft and amber. You knock gently. A pause, then a man's voice. If you're selling prayers, I already bought too many. You smile. Just asking for water. A rustle, then the door opens. The man is tall, thin, wrapped in layers of rough wool. He looks tired but kind. That special kind of kindness people grow when there's nothing left to lose. He gestures you in. Come. Before the river takes the warmth off you. Inside, the cottage smells of smoke and mint. A kettle hums faintly over the fire. The man pours you a cup without asking what you want. Watered ale, he says. Better than both alone. You sip. He's right. The room is filled with carvings. Wooden animals lined along the shelf. Birds, foxes, horses, all shaped by a steady hand. You pick one up, a small sparrow with smooth wings. He notices. Made them for my boy. He liked things that didn't need feeding. You glance around. He's not here. He shakes his head. Gone to the other side of the hill. Longer walk than I'd like. You don't ask which hill he means. There's only one kind now. Historical fact. Toy carving became a strange act of therapy during plague years. A way for parents to keep hands busy and memory still. Some made entire miniature farms or ships, not to sell but to imagine a world that continued. He hands you a loaf of coarse bread. Eat, he says simply. Talking can wait. You share the meal in silence. The fire crackles, throwing amber light on the wooden animals. The river hums just outside, steady as ever. Finally he says, they say the plague listens when you talk about it. You nod. Then let's talk about bread instead. He grins. Better subject. Doesn't talk back. You laugh quietly. He asks where you're headed. You shrug. Wherever isn't here. He considers that, then says, you'll never find such a place, but you might find company on the way. You look at him. His eyes bright in the firelight. His face carved by fatigue and gentleness. You offering? He shakes his head. No, I keep the river company. It's already used to my silence. You finish the meal, thank him, and step outside again. The night has deepened, the stars sharp and cold. The river glows faintly under the moon, winding like a silver thread through the black fields. Weird tidbit. Some medieval travelers believed rivers could carry prayers downstream faster than words, that water remembered kindness. You kneel and dip your hand into the current, whispering nothing in particular. The water feels alive, listening. You walk along the bank until the cottage light fades behind you. The moon follows faithfully overhead, and the sound of the river steadies your steps. Historians still debate whether survivors of the plague were more fearful or more free, whether loss loosened their hearts or hardened them beyond repair. You don't know. You only know the world is quieter now, and maybe that's not entirely bad. You pause, look up at the stars, and murmur, still here. Then softer, still walking. The river answers in ripples. The night hums faintly. The story goes on. The next morning finds you half dreaming beneath a tree. Dawn seeps through the branches, soft and golden. Birds stir. The grass smells of dew and ash. You stretch, your body reminding you that survival is mostly a matter of repetition. Rise, walk, breathe, repeat. When you finally start moving again, the path winds through low mist, the kind that hides everything but the sound of your own footsteps. A farmhouse appears faintly ahead, then vanishes again, swallowed by fog. You hear a faint bell. Not church bells this time, smaller, faster. You follow the sound until the mist parts to reveal a cluster of huts and a small stone building crowned with a crooked cross. A monastery, or what's left of one. The gate stands open, vines curling over the wood. You step through. The courtyard is quiet but not empty. A few robed figures move slowly, carrying baskets of herbs. Their steps are measured, their expressions unreadable. One of them looks up at you. He's older, his hair grayer than the walls. His eyes are kind but not naive. You're not from here. No one's from anywhere anymore, you say. He smiles at that. True enough. Come in. The air's better inside the cloister. You follow him through a stone archway. The air is cool, smelling of rosemary, parchment, and smoke. He gestures to a bench beneath the arches. Sit. We tend to the sick, or what's left of them. You've walked far, far enough to forget where I started. He nods. That's a blessing. A younger monk passes, holding a bundle of plants. Marigold, the elder murmurs. We use it for wounds, though these days, there are too many wounds and not enough marigold. Historical fact. Many monastic orders became de facto hospitals during the plague, despite little knowledge of medicine. Their herbal gardens, called physic gardens, became sanctuaries of desperate hope. You glance around. In the cloister's center grows a small garden. Lavender, sage, hyssop, and something that smells sharply of pine. Bees drift lazily among the blossoms. You hear soft chanting from a nearby hall, Latin words fading into echoes. The sound fills the air like incense, heavy but strangely calming. The elder monk hands you a small vial. Vinegar and herbs, he explains. We wear them around the neck. It helps us believe the air is less dangerous. You smile faintly. And does it work? He looks thoughtful. It works on the mind. The body is slower to follow. Weird tidbit. Some monks believed scent itself could drive away plague vapors. They burned juniper, laurel, and even shoes to purify rooms. He walks with you along the cloister's edge. We once copied books, he says, touching a stack of parchments. Now we copy lists of the dead. You look at the ink-stained pages. Names, dates, small prayers written in cramped Latin. He notices your silence. Writing them down, he says quietly, is how we keep them alive, just long enough for memory to notice. You leave the monastery at sunset. The air smells of smoke and mint. As you turn back once, the elder lifts a hand in farewell, framed by the last light of the day. For a long time after, you can still hear the faint hum of chanting, a rhythm for the weary, echoing inside your chest like a heartbeat. Night again. You walk beneath a sky filled with unblinking stars. The air tastes metallic, like rain that forgot how to fall. You find a small hut by the roadside, no light, no sound. Inside, a few broken pots, a broom, and a half-burnt candle. You decide it's as good a place as any to stop. You light the candle. This flame trembles in the draft, small and stubborn. The shadows sway like dancers with no music left. You pull your cloak around yourself and settle against the wall. The quiet feels thick tonight, the kind of silence that has texture. Your stomach growls softly. You reach for the last crust of bread and chew slowly, pretending it's better than it is. You can almost hear your old self laughing, the one who once cared about taste. You whisper, "Don't be dramatic," and laugh quietly at your own voice. Then you hear it, footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. You freeze. The steps stop just beyond the door. A voice? You awake. You hesitate. Maybe. The door creaks open. A man stands there, wearing a leather coat and a bird-like mask. Long beak, round eyes of glass. The candlelight glints on it. You've seen drawings of these before. Plague doctor. He removes the mask, revealing a narrow, tired face. Don't worry, he says dryly. I'm mostly harmless. You nod. That's what everyone says before doing something memorable. He chuckles. Fair. He sits across from you, stretching his legs toward the candle. I was a barber once, he says. Then people started dying faster than they needed haircuts. You raise an eyebrow. Logical career move. He grins. I thought so. He takes out a pouch and sprinkles herbs into the flame. It flares green for a moment, then settles back. The air smells sharper, cleaner. Rue and sage, he explains. Not medicine, but it feels like it. Historical fact, the famous plague doctor mask wasn't common until the 17th century, but early versions existed, long beaks stuffed with aromatic herbs, believed to filter the deadly air. He stares into the flame. They say it comes from bad air. But I've seen villages where the air was sweet and still, and the people still fell. You nod. Maybe it's not the air. Maybe it's us. He smiles sadly. Always has been. Weird tidbit. Some healers swore that carrying emeralds or eating crushed pearls could protect the body. Others recommended onion water or crushed toads. Humanity's creativity has always outpaced its wisdom. The doctor leans back. I'm heading east, he says. There's talk of survivors gathering there. Maybe starting again. You consider it. Do you believe them? He shrugs. I believe in walking. That's enough. He stands, adjusts his mask. You should come. It's easier to keep going when someone else is too tired to stop. You nod slowly. Maybe I will. He nods once more and steps into the night. The candle flickers as the door closes. You watch the flame for a long time, then whisper to the darkness. Still here. The words feel heavier now, but true. Outside, the doctor's footsteps fade. The wind moves through the grass, soft and endless. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you'll walk east, or wherever the road bends. It doesn't matter. The world may be dying, but the story isn't done. You wake before dawn, the air damp and cool. The candle has burned out, leaving a thin thread of smoke curling upward like a ghost that forgot to leave. You pack what little you have, cloak, pouch, a few crumbs of bread, the lavender sprig from days ago, now brittle and pale. You almost toss it away, then stop. A dead flower still remembers sunlight. Outside, the road east is nothing more than 2 wagon ruts through a field of tall grass. Mist drapes everything in soft silver. Somewhere in that mist, you hear distant voices. You hesitate, listening. Not monks, not soldiers. Travelers. You step closer. Shapes emerge. 4 of them, leading a mule laden with sacks. They're arguing in the gentle, tired way people do when all real anger has already been spent years ago. A woman notices you first. Another one? She says, without surprise. You nod. Just passing through. She smiles faintly. That's all any of us are. Her group includes 2 men and a boy. The boy is barefoot, hair sticking up like a dandelion, eyes bright. He looks at you with suspicion and curiosity in equal measure. We're going east, the woman says. They say there's a place, near the old Roman fort, where the sickness never reached. You nod. Everyone says that. She shrugs. We'd rather chase a rumor than stay still. Historical fact. Many medieval people followed such rumors. Safe towns, holy wells, or untouched valleys. Chroniclers mention groups wandering for months, chasing safety that always lay one village further. You walk with them for a while, feel strange, almost luxurious, to hear other voices again. Laughter that doesn't sound like an accident. The older man hums a tune, off-key but cheerful. The boy throws pebbles at fence posts and pretends each hit earns a coin. The woman tells stories, small, unimportant ones about bread gone wrong and chickens that refuse to lay. They ask your name. You almost answer, then realize you haven't spoken it in days. Weeks, maybe. You offer a shrug instead. Doesn't matter, the woman says. Names fall off after a while. You smile, like bark from an old tree. Exactly, she says. As the sun rises, the mist burns away. The world widens, hills unfolding, a patchwork of empty farms, streams glittering like broken glass. You reach a fork in the road. One path dips into a valley filled with fog. The other climbs toward a ridge where the wind howls freely. The woman looks at both, then at you. Which way smells less like trouble? You squint toward the ridge. Uphill. Always harder, usually safer. She grins. That sounds like bad advice I'm willing to take. You start climbing together. By midday you reach the top. Below, a new sight. Rooftops clustered around a river. Smoke curling gently. A town. Maybe the rumor's real after all, the boy says. You exchange glances with the woman. Neither of you answers. Historians still debate whether people truly believed in those untouched towns or if they simply needed a direction to walk in. Hope, after all, is easier to carry than certainty. The road winds downward. You can smell bread baking, faint but real. For the first time in days, you let yourself imagine warmth. And because life likes a good joke, that's when thunder rolls in. Rain. Not a polite drizzle. A full, determined downpour. Within minutes, the road turns to mud. The boy laughs, delighted. The rest of you are less enthusiastic. The woman pulls her hood tighter. I suppose even paradise has weather. You grin. That's how it keeps the crowds down. You reach the town's edge soaked to the bone. The walls are wooden, patched and uneven, but they stand. That alone feels miraculous. A guard, or maybe just a man with a spear and confidence, steps forward. Where from? He asks. Everywhere, the woman says. He frowns. We don't take in sick ones. You lift your hands. None of us cough prettier than you do, I promise. He smirks despite himself and waves you through. Inside, the town feels strange. Alive, but cautious. Stalls line the street, though half are empty. You see bread, onions, even fish, proof of trade somewhere beyond this pocket of survival. Children dart between puddles, laughing. A dog barks. A blacksmith hammers rhythmically in the distance. Feels normal, dangerously normal. You follow the group to an inn. The sign creaks overhead. The Sparrow and Wheel. A tired name for tired times. Inside, warmth hits you like a soft punch. The air smells of wood smoke and cider. A few travelers huddle near the fire, eyes dull but not hopeless. The innkeeper, a round man with arms like bread loaves, eyes you carefully. For beds, 2 pennies each. 5, the woman says. And we can pay in flour. He raises an eyebrow. Flour's worth more than coins these days. Then we'll take 2 nights, she says. He laughs. Deal. You sit near the fire, feeling heat crawl back into your hands. The boy plays with the cat that clearly owns the place. You overhear whispers from a nearby table. Talk of a healer who uses leeches dipped in wine, of a preacher claiming the plague is punishment for forgotten saints, of a caravan headed further east. Weird tidbit. Some medieval healers actually soaked leeches in red wine before applying them, believing the alcohol nobled the humor. It didn't, but it made for good conversation. You sip your ale and smile faintly. The innkeeper passes by. You new here? You nod. He leans closer. You'll find this town quieter than most. We keep things orderly. You look around. Everyone's polite, calm, too calm. Even the laughter feels measured, as though joy requires permission. Later, upstairs, you find your bed by the window. The rain has stopped, leaving the streets glistening under lantern light. You hear faint singing below, the kind of song people use to convince themselves they're safe. You lie back, listening. Historians still debate whether these clean towns truly survived unscathed or if they simply buried their dead quietly. Some say isolation worked. Others that luck did. Most likely, both. You close your eyes and whisper, "Still here." Outside, thunder rolls again, softer this time. More like a sigh than a warning. Somewhere in the street below, the boy's wooden bird spins in the puddles, floating in slow circles. You smile in the dark. Even broken toys can dream of flight. Morning drips into the town like honey, slow, golden, reluctant. You wake to the sound of bells. Not church bells exactly, smaller ones, tinny and insistent. When you open the window, you see them strung across the street. Ribbons and bits of copper tied to door handles. They shimmer faintly in the wind. The woman from your group appears below, handing a loaf of bread to the boy. The others are already outside, talking to a baker. You decide to join them. The streets smell of yeast and damp wood. Everything looks normal, almost overly so. A little too much sweeping. A little too much smiling. You greet the baker. He nods, eyes kind but weary. "You're travelers," he says, as if it's an accusation softened by politeness. You nod. "Still walking." "Not much walking needed here," he replies. "We stay put. Safer that way." He glances toward the town gate, where two men stand with spears. You follow his gaze. "Do they expect trouble?" you ask. He hesitates. "They expect motion." You don't press. Historical fact. Many medieval healthy towns limited movement in and out during the plague, creating early versions of quarantine. Some find travelers. Others simply turn them away. You wander through the market. A woman sells candles shaped like saints, claiming they keep the sickness out. A man offers salt, blessed by 3 priests and a thunderstorm. You buy neither but appreciate the confidence. By the well, a small crowd gathers. Someone's preaching. A young man with clear eyes and an alarming amount of energy for this century. "The air here is pure," he declares. "Because we are pure. We share bread, not fear." A few people cheer half-heartedly. One sneezes, then looks mortified. The boy beside you whispers, "Do you think it's true?" You smile. Bread helps. Purity's more complicated. Weird tidbit. In certain towns, purity laws were enforced, forbidding loud laughter, dancing, or even cooking with garlic, because they believed sin itself attracted the plague. You watch the preacher's eyes flick toward the guard post. He speaks louder. "Only faith keeps us whole." You sigh softly. Faith, like bread, grows stale when overbaked. Later that afternoon, you explore the edge of town. A small river runs behind the houses, its surface glittering with fallen petals. You notice something odd. Every home by the river has its windows boarded from inside. You ask a passing woman about it. She flinches. "Those houses are sealed," she says. "Old sickness. We keep them shut." You nod, though you can tell from her tone that old sickness means something else entirely, something still breathing behind those boards. Historians still debate how long plague victims were left sealed in their homes before burial, whether days or weeks passed before anyone dared to enter. The sun begins to sink, washing the rooftops in amber light. You walk back toward the inn, the bells on the doors chiming gently as the wind passes through. They sound cheerful if you don't listen too hard. At the corner, you notice the preacher again, speaking softly now to a man in a dark cloak. They stop talking when they see you. You nod politely. They nod back too slowly. You decide not to ask questions. Not yet. That night, the inn feels busier. More travelers, pale, quiet, clean. Too clean. The woman and boy sit near the fire. The older man from your group plays dice with a merchant. Laughter flickers briefly, then fades like smoke. The innkeeper pours you ale. "You've settled in nicely," he says, smiling a smile that's too deliberate. You sip. "It's a fine town." "It is," he agrees, "because we keep it that way." He leans closer. "Every evening the council meets. You'll hear the bell soon. Means curfew. No one outside after that." "Because of thieves?" you ask. He chuckles. "Because of stories." The bell rings then, slow, deliberate, each toll heavy as sleep. Outside, shutters close. The streets empty in moments. You glance out the window. Even the cats vanish. You return to the fire, pretending calm. The boy whispers, "Why does everyone hide?" "Maybe they just like being indoors," you say lightly. He frowns. "Even the dogs?" You don't answer. Historical fact. During plague years, curfews were often enforced to limit movement at night. Less for safety, more for control. Fear behaved better in darkness. As the evening deepens, the wind rises. You hear faint rustling outside, then the slow creak of wheels. You peek through the shutter slats. A cart passes, covered with canvas. Two men walk beside it. They wear masks. You step back quietly. The innkeeper notices but says nothing. You return to your seat, pretending you didn't see anything at all. Weird tidbit. Some healthy towns secretly remove the sick at night to avoid panic, loading them onto carts and leaving them outside the gates before dawn. You feel a cold weight settle behind your ribs. The preacher's voice echoes faintly in memory. "We are pure." The boy yawns. The woman rests her head on her hand, exhausted. For a moment, you envy them the luxury of unawareness. You whisper, half to yourself, "Still here." The words feel thinner tonight. Historians still debate how many safe towns were truly spared, and how many simply rewrote their endings to sound less tragic. You climb the stairs to your room. The wind rattles the shutters like impatient fingers. You light a candle and sit by the window, watching shadows slide across the empty street. Then you notice something odd. Faint lights flickering beyond the river. Torches moving in a slow procession. You watch until they fade behind the trees. Then you blow out your candle. The darkness folds around you like a blanket you didn't ask for. Tomorrow you tell yourself you'll leave this town. You don't entirely believe it. You wake to quiet that feels rehearsed. The sunlight trickles in through warped glass, spilling across the wooden floor in honeyed stripes. The town outside hums faintly. Someone sweeping, a horse stamping, the sound of water being poured into a bucket. You sit by the window and watch. Across the street, the baker from yesterday sets out his bread. The smell drifts through the air, warm and promising. For a moment, everything feels ordinary, until you notice nobody's buying. The market stalls stand open, full, but the people are gone. You hear voices somewhere distant, behind walls. Then the faint toll of a bell. Another one. Then another. The same rhythm as last night. You glance down the street. 2 guards close the gate again, even though it's mid-morning. The sound of the lock echoes. You turn to the woman from your group. She's already watching from the other window. "Something's happening," she says. "Something always is," you answer softly. You both smile, but it doesn't quite reach your eyes. Historical fact. In some quarantine towns, bells were rung not just for church services, but as coded signals, warnings, funerals, or calls for the sick to stay indoors. You go downstairs. The innkeeper is polishing a mug that's already spotless. "Busy morning?" you ask. He smiles too brightly. "Routine inspection. Nothing to worry about." You wonder who's inspecting whom. You step outside. The air smells of damp linen and ash. A group of people walk quickly through the street, all carrying small bundles wrapped in cloth. They keep their heads down. You follow quietly. They stop near the river, the one lined with boarded houses. A wooden platform stands there now. You're not sure it was there yesterday. A man in a cloak checks the bundles. Each is opened, sniffed, and marked with chalk before being placed into a barrel. The smell hits you, herbs, salt, something metallic. "Supplies?" You ask a woman nearby. She shakes her head. "No." "Bedding. Burned after use." You nod, trying not to show what you feel. Weird tidbit. Some medieval health ordinances required burning not only clothing but entire mattresses used by the sick, even if the illness was long gone. Fire was their disinfectant, their version of faith. You watch as they pour oil over the barrels. The river reflects the first flames like trembling suns. The boy tugs your sleeve. "Can we leave now?" "Soon," you tell him. "We'll find a road no one's guarding." He nods, though you both know that in a world this afraid, all roads lead to gates. Historians still debate how strictly these town quarantines were enforced, whether people obeyed out of fear or were simply too tired to run. As the smoke rises, the wind changes direction. You catch the faint sound of someone coughing from behind a boarded window. The guards don't turn. You do. Evening again. The air feels thick, like it's been used too many times. You sit near the river with the woman, the boy asleep beside you, his head on her lap. The preacher appears again, alone now, his white robe stained with ash. He sees you and smiles faintly. "You're not afraid," he says. You shrug. "Maybe just well practiced." He laughs softly. "Good. The others are losing faith." You tilt your head. "Faith in what?" "In the town," he says. "In the plan." He sits beside you uninvited, staring at the water. The wind lifts his hair, and for the first time he looks tired. "Once a week," he murmurs. "We choose houses to check. We open the doors, see if anyone's sick. If we find them, we help them move on. Peacefully." "Move on," you repeat. He doesn't answer. Historical fact. Some quarantine settlements practice selective purges, removing households suspected of sickness under the guise of mercy, often without record or burial. You look toward the boarded houses. The wind sighs through them like a sleeping animal. "They said this town was safe," you whisper. "It is," The preacher replies, eyes still on the water. Because we make it safe. Weird tidbit. There are records of plague councils sworn to secrecy, whose members took oaths not to speak of the methods used to preserve their town's health. Even generations later, you can almost hear that oath echo in his tone. A silence unfolds between you, long and oddly gentle, the kind that belongs to confession. Do you believe what you do is right? You ask. He thinks for a long moment. I believe, he says slowly, that the dead are quieter than the fearful. The woman opens her eyes, listening without meaning to. Her face hardens like frost. You stand. We'll leave at dawn. Many say that, the preacher replies. Few find the gates open. Historians still debate whether some of these untouched plague towns truly existed, or if their stories were invented to comfort later generations that control was ever possible. The preacher walks away, his silhouette dissolving into the fog. You watch him until he disappears completely. The woman exhales. We're leaving, she says again, even if we have to climb the walls. You nod. The wind carries the faint sound of bells once more, slow, deliberate, almost tender. They don't sound like warning anymore. They sound like goodbye. You wake before dawn. The air smells like rain. Clean, new, the kind of scent that promises change, though it rarely delivers. The woman already has the boy wrapped in a blanket. The older man carries a bundle of bread and dried apples. You all move quietly down the inn stairs. The innkeeper sleeps in his chair, mouth open, one hand still clutching a key ring. You step around him like he's another piece of furniture. Outside, the streets are empty. The bells hang motionless now, beads of dew trembling along their strings. The gates are ahead, dark shapes against a dim horizon. You feel your pulse match the rhythm of your steps. The woman whispers, if we can reach the woods before sunrise. You nod, but as you approach the gate, you hear a low cough. Then another. 2 guards step out from the shadows, masks over their faces. Their spears cross with a soft clink. Travel is forbidden, one says. His voice sounds tired, not angry. Just another person doing what fear tells him to. We're leaving to stay safe, you reply. He tilts his head. There's no safety out there. He gestures vaguely toward the misty fields beyond. The sickness walks the roads. You almost laugh. It also walks the streets. For a moment no one speaks. Then the other guard sighs. Turn back. The council will open the gate when it's time. When is that? When no one dies for 7 days. You look around. And when was the last time that happened? He hesitates. That's your answer. Historical fact. Some medieval towns measured their safety by counting plague-free days, requiring a week or more without death before ending lockdowns. Most never met the quota. You step closer. We won't cause trouble. Just let us go. The first guard's hand tightens on his spear. The other looks away. You know that look, the one that says he agrees but doesn't dare. A long pause stretches thin between you. Then the boy sneezes. Softly, but the sound cuts through the air like a bell. The guards flinch. Go home, one says sharply. Now. You retreat slowly, hands raised. You turn the corner and disappear into the fog before they can change their minds. The woman's face is pale. They think. I know, you say. We'll try again tonight. You walk back through the quiet town. The bells shimmer faintly in the morning breeze, though no one's touching them. Weird tidbit. In some isolated towns, guards were ordered to drive off outsiders by sound. Bells, drums, or horns, rather than contact. Fear had etiquette. You pass the boarded houses. One board hangs loose. A pale hand rests briefly on the edge before slipping back inside. Historians still debate how many of those quarantined homes ever reopened, and how many simply became new walls for the living to avoid. You keep walking. The boy takes your hand, his fingers cold and small. Somewhere behind you, the bells begin again. Night falls early. It always does when you need more daylight. You sit in the inn, pretending to rest, watching shadows climb the walls. The air feels full, like the pause before thunder. The woman looks at you across the table. "There's another way," she whispers. "The river." She nods. "Downstream leads out of the valley. No gates there." The older man frowns. "And if they're watching the banks? Then we swim," she says simply. You admire her resolve. Maybe terror sharpens courage. Or maybe it just erases alternatives. Historical fact. Some plague survivors fled by rivers, the cleanest route, they thought, since disease traveled on air and filth, not on flowing water. Ironically, many rivers spread contamination faster. You glance at the boy. He's tracing lines on the table with his finger, humming softly. "You're ready?" you ask. He nods. "I dreamed of boats." "Well then," you say, "that's a good omen or a bad one." Scholars are still debating which. She smiles despite herself. Weird tidbit. Medieval dream books claimed that dreaming of boats meant both safe passage and impending judgment. The interpretation depended on how wet you woke up. You pack quickly. Bread, blanket, matches, luck. Outside, the streets are quieter than before. Like the town itself is holding its breath. A dog barks once, then falls silent. You follow the narrow path behind the mill, down to the riverbank. The moon hangs low, silvering everything it touches. The water glimmers like a moving mirror. You hear the bells again. Faint, distant, but steady. They sound like heartbeat and warning at once. The woman steps in first, her skirt darkening as the water climbs. You follow, holding the boy's hand. The current tugs softly, like an impatient friend. Halfway across, the boy gasps. Someone's there. You turn. On the far bank, a figure stands with a torch, one of the guards. His mask glints in the firelight. You freeze. He doesn't shout, doesn't move, just watches. The torchlight wavers. Then, slowly, he lowers it and turns away. You breathe again. Historians still debate why certain guards looked the other way. Compassion, exhaustion, or the quiet knowledge that no wall lasts forever. You reach the opposite shore, drenched but alive. The woman laughs, quietly, incredulously. The sound startles a heron into flight. For the first time in weeks, you feel something close to lightness. The boy squeezes your hand. "Are we safe now?" You glance back at the town. Its bells faint now, the smoke from its chimneys rising like sighs. "Not safe," you say softly. "Just farther away." The night carries your words away downstream. The river carries you through morning mist. You drift more than walk for a while, half following the bank, half letting the current decide where you go. The world feels softer here. Fewer walls, fewer eyes. The woman's shoes squelch in the mud. The boy hums something tuneless, inventing songs about fish that probably don't exist. You find a fallen log to rest on. Your legs ache not from running, but from the kind of relief that comes after it. Behind you, the valley fades into fog. You almost expect to see the town's towers crumble when you blink, but they stay there, patient and small, pretending to be safe. The older man unwraps the bread. "We should find a farm," he says. Work for food. Say we're pilgrims. Pilgrims to what? You ask. He smiles. Survival. A holy sight these days. You laugh quietly. It's the first sound that feels real in a while. Historical fact. During plague years, many peasants disguised themselves as pilgrims to move between regions safely, claiming religious purpose. The church often looked the other way. Holiness was contagious too, in its own way. You walk again, following the river bend. Birds flit between reeds, unconcerned with human disasters. Their indifference feels almost comforting. You pass a patch of white stones arranged in a circle. Not graves, you realize, markers. Camp once stood here. Abandoned. Someone left behind a wooden spoon, a torn piece of cloth, a child's shoe. You feel the weight of lives that ended mid-sentence. Weird tidbit. Some travelers marked abandoned plague camps with circles of stones to warn others. A primitive signage system that doubled as an unspoken prayer. You rest beneath a willow, its branches trailing into the water like sleepy fingers. The wind moves through the leaves with a whispering sound that could almost be language. The woman speaks softly. Maybe this is what freedom sounds like. You nod. A bit too damp. But yes. She smiles, tired but alive. Historians still debate whether freedom meant movement or isolation during the plague, whether escaping others was survival or just a quieter form of fear. As the day drifts on, you make camp near a bend in the river. The boy catches a frog and names it Sir Leapington. You approve. It's important to keep nobility alive somehow. That night, the stars appear. Clear, steady, endless. You realize it's the first night you've seen them without smoke between. You almost believe the air itself might forgive you. Morning comes with birdsong that sounds suspiciously optimistic. You walk east, where the ground rises slightly. Fields spread before you. Long stretches of green dotted with wildflowers, silent as a dream. A farmhouse appears in the distance. White smoke curls from its chimney. You hesitate. Civilization is a coin with two sides now. The woman says, "They're alive. That's something." You approach slowly, like a cat approaching a stranger's lap. An old man stands outside, stacking firewood. He sees you and pauses, axe still in hand. You raise your hand in greeting. "We mean no harm." He studies you for a long moment, then nods once. "Hungry?" "Yes," you say honestly. He gestures toward the yard. "Bread and milk." But no closer than that bench. You sit. The bench is damp. The bread is coarse. The milk is warm. It's the best meal you've had in days. "Where from?" he asks. "Down river." "Ah," he says. "The walled town." You don't confirm or deny. His eyes tell you he already knows. Historical fact. Survivors who fled plague towns were often treated as contagious even after weeks of isolation. Rural families sometimes traded food at a distance, the first form of contactless delivery minus the marketing. He sets another loaf beside a small pile of herbs. "Take those too. Boil them. They keep the air sweet." You thank him. He nods again, voice quiet. "I had a wife. She used to hang herbs everywhere. Said it kept the devil out. Maybe it did. Maybe not. You don't ask what happened to her." His silence fills in the rest. Weird tidbit. Some households hung bouquets of rosemary and juniper from every rafter, believing spirits could be distracted by pleasant smells. Early aromatherapy with higher stakes. The woman touches the boy's hair gently. "Do you ever get used to it?" she asks the old man. He looks at her with tired eyes. "To what?" "The quiet." He shakes his head. No. But it stops feeling like punishment after a while. Historians still debate how rural life adapted to the plague, whether isolation strengthened communities or simply turned them into collections of parallel solitudes. As you leave, the man raises a hand again. Don't drink from still water, he calls out. And if you find apples too red, leave them. The sick always touch what's beautiful. You thank him once more. The woman whispers, "Do you think we'll ever stop walking?" "Eventually," you say. "Either the world will heal, or our feet will give up first." She laughs softly. Comforting. You smile. It's all in the tone. The boy runs ahead, chasing butterflies through the tall grass. His laughter rises above the wind like something stubbornly alive. You follow, slower, thoughtful, and for the first time in weeks, a little hopeful. The road bends toward hills. You follow it until your legs forget they have other purposes. The wind carries the smell of time and smoke. Somewhere, a bird of prey circles, as if searching for stories to finish. By midday, you see movement ahead, figures on the road. Travelers like you, though like feels too generous. They're cleaner, better fed, their cloaks newer. You slow your pace. The woman grips the boy's hand. The older man mutters, "We're not the only survivors, then." The group ahead, 5 people, maybe 6, notice you. One raises a hand. "Peace." You raise yours back. When you meet, you exchange the usual phrases. Where from, where going, any towns left open, any water left clean. The answers are all half hope, half fabrication. They say they've come from the west, from a valley untouched by sickness. "It's clean," the tallest man says. "We have gardens, chickens, children laughing." The way he says it sounds memorized. You ask, "How many live there?" "Enough," he replies. "Not too many." You glance at the woman beside him. She smiles too quickly. The boy, tired of adult tension, asks, "Do you have frogs?" "Yes," she says immediately. "Plenty." You want to believe her. Historical fact, throughout Europe, rumors spread of clean valleys, remote areas spared by plague, where life continued as before. Many were mirages of hope, used by desperate migrants as directions rather than destinations. You walk with them for a while. They share food, salted meat, dried pears, optimism. They speak softly, with the rhythm of people who've practiced agreement. By evening, you reach a crossroads. A wooden sign points in 4 directions. None have legible names anymore. The tall man gestures east. "Our valley's 2 days that way." The woman from your group glances at you. "We could go." You shrug. 2 days of hope sounds restful. Weird tidbit. Some 14th century travelers tied scraps of cloth to crossroads posts to mark directions to healing places. Most were followed by others, creating trails of shredded fabric fluttering like ghostly flags. You notice such cloth now moving in the breeze. Red, white, blue, faded prayers written in fabric. That night you camp together by the road. They sing softly before sleeping, something about rivers and forgiveness. The boy sleeps quickly, as if dreaming of frogs again. The older man sits beside you, whispering, "They're too calm." "Maybe calm is the last form of madness," you say. He chuckles. "You'd know." Historians still debate whether these stories of clean valleys were early propaganda or collective hallucination, hope's final defense against despair. You lie awake long after the others sleep, watching the firelight dance against their faces. Their peace looks borrowed, like a costume worn too long. The next morning, Fog rolls in so thick it could hide a city. You walk with the new group, their voices muffled, their outlines ghostly. The tall man leads with a walking stick that doubles as authority. At midday he points to a rise ahead. Beyond that hill you'll see. You climb, your breath misting in the cool air. When you reach the top, you do see something. A cluster of huts, smoke curling from chimneys, fields of pale green wheat. It looks real. The boy laughs. It's true. The woman grips your arm. We found it. You smile, but it feels cautious, like testing a bridge that might not hold. As you approach, a group of villagers wave. Children run toward you, barefoot and laughing. They look healthy. The air smells of bread and rain. It's almost indecent how alive it feels. You're led to a communal hall, offered stew, water, even a smile that doesn't seem rehearsed. The tall man says proudly, "We take care of our own." The woman from your group asks, "No sickness here?" "None," he replies. "Not for months. We wash twice daily, eat herbs, pray together. The Lord protects us." Historical fact. Some regions genuinely experience delayed or partial outbreaks. Not from divine favor, but isolation, fresh air, and clean water. These communities became legends of divine immunity. You listen as villagers talk about routine, rules, rituals. Every family eats at the same hour. No one leaves after dark. Each morning begins with a song. They show you a small stream that runs through the settlement, bubbling cheerfully like it's unaware of human problems. "Clean water," the tall man says. "Our life." You drink. It tastes of minerals and promise. Weird tidbit. In one Swiss chronicle, villagers were ordered to greet the water before drinking, literally bowing to it, believing it would keep them pure. Some historians think it was more about gratitude than hygiene. You watch a woman kneel and whisper to the stream. You can't decide if it's madness or wisdom. That night, you're given a small hut near the edge of the settlement. Straw bedding. A window with a view of the fields. The quiet hum of people pretending not to be afraid. The boy sleeps soundly for the first time in weeks. The woman sighs, content. The older man says, "Maybe we finally stopped walking." "Maybe," you say, "but don't unpack too deeply." Historians still debate how long such clean valleys lasted, whether they survived untouched or simply postponed the inevitable. You close your eyes. The sound of the stream outside feels like breathing. You almost let yourself believe it's safe. Almost. You wake to birdsong. Not the kind that shrieks for dawn, but the soft, polite kind. As if the birds, too, have learned to whisper here. The village is already moving when you step outside. People sweep doorways, fetch water, exchange nods that feel rehearsed. Even the goats seem unusually mannerly. You stretch, blinking at the brightness. It's almost jarring. After weeks of ash-colored days and smoke-thick skies, this feels like being dropped into someone else's dream. A young woman passes, carrying herbs in a basket. She pauses. "Newcomer." You nod. "Wash before breakfast," she says, pointing to a small stone basin. "We all do. The air stays cleaner that way." You rinse your hands. The water is icy. Somewhere behind you, a child giggles. A sound you'd almost forgotten belonged to the living. At the communal hall, bread and broth are served. The villagers eat in silence, heads slightly bowed, as if mealtime is half prayer, half obligation. The tall man, the one who led you here, sits at the head of the table, nodding at each bowl passed. His name, you learn, is Tomas. He looks proud, calm, unbothered by the nervous glances of newcomers. "We survive because we obey," he says between sips. "The rules keep us whole." Historical fact: many late medieval communities formed hyper-strict local codes during plague years, curfews, daily rituals, even assigned routes for walking, all meant to preserve the illusion of order amid chaos. You listen as he lists them. Wash in the stream before sunrise. No one leaves the valley without permission. No talking of sickness at night. No burying the dead without song. The last one catches your attention. You ask, "How often do you need to sing?" Tomas smiles. "Not often." The woman from your group glances at you. You can tell she's trying to believe that's a good sign. Later, you wander through the fields. Wheat brushes against your hands. Bees hum. The air is warm, smelling faintly of rosemary and smoke. You see a man painting white crosses on a fence. He waves cheerfully. "Keeps the rot away," he says. You don't ask what kind of rot. Weird tidbit. In certain alpine villages, people marked fences and barns with lime crosses, not as warnings, but as talismans. Some painted over them every month, believing the plague couldn't pass freshly painted symbols. By sunset, you've helped gather herbs, fetch water, and learn the rhythm of their days. Everything here seems designed to lull you, not into trust exactly, but into quiet repetition. When night comes, you sit by your hut window and watch torchlight ripple along the paths. The villagers sing low, slow hymns that stretch into the dark like threads of comfort. You almost join in. Almost. Historians still debate whether such communities truly survived untouched, or simply rewrote their stories later, editing out the losses to protect their legends. As you drift toward sleep, you think, maybe surviving isn't about luck or faith. Maybe it's just about finding the right rhythm and never breaking it. The next morning, the fog feels thicker than usual. Not heavy, but intimate, like the valley wants to keep its secrets. You walk to the stream for washing, as the rule says. Others are already there, bowing slightly before dipping their hands. One woman murmurs a rhyme. Clear in the water, clear in the soul. You mimic it softly, and for a moment you almost feel part of something larger than fear. But something's different today. The air carries a metallic scent, faint but wrong. You glance upstream. A small group is gathered, whispering. Tomas stands among them, his cloak dark with morning dew. He looks serious, which for him means slightly more than usual. When you approach, he turns. "The stream's slower," he says. "We'll dig above it, check for blockages." You nod, though you're not sure what he means. The woman from your group leans in. "What if it's not a blockage?" Tomas gives her a look that ends the conversation. Later that day, you help with the digging. The earth is damp, rich. Worms curl like punctuation marks in the soil. After a while, someone shouts. A log, old, half-rotten, wedged across the flow. You all pull it free, and the water runs clear again. Relief passes through the group like a shared exhale. "See," Tomas says, "even nature obeys." He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Historical fact: when streams or wells failed during plague years, it was often blamed on sin or sorcery. Villagers dug purification trenches, a mix of real drainage work and symbolic cleansing. That night, as you rest, the older man from your group sits by the door. "You notice," he says, "no one ever laughs here for real?" You nod. They hum instead. "Yeah," he says, "like bees that forgot how to sting." Outside, the moonlight gleams on the stream. You hear distant singing again. Slower tonight, almost mournful. Weird tidbit. In one 14th century manuscript, a monk described a valley of silence, where survivors lived under an oath never to shout or argue, fearing that loud sounds would invite the plague back. The sound fades. The valley breathes. The quiet feels deeper than before, like it's watching itself. Historians still debate whether these silent communities were real or metaphorical, early allegories for control disguised as peace. You turn in your straw bed, the night too soft to trust. Tomorrow will come gently as always, but gentleness, you think, is not the same as safety. You wake to bells, not church bells, smaller, softer ones, like someone's shaking a pouch of sound. You step outside, still half dreaming, and see the villagers lined along the path, each holding a small brass bell in their left hand. Tomas stands at the center, arms raised. Today, he says, we remember silence. They all nod. Then they ring the bells once, a chime so gentle it sounds like memory itself. No one speaks after. They just disperse back to washing, cooking, tending. You watch, half in awe, half in unease. What was that? You whisper to the woman from your group. A ceremony, she says. I think. Later, a child tells you the bells are to keep the air awake. You nod because honestly that explanation feels as good as any other. Historical fact. In parts of plague-stricken Europe, air purifications were performed with sound. Bells, horns, even cannon fire. The belief was that vibration cleansed the miasma, shaking sickness out of the wind. You follow the routine, water, herbs, silence. The villagers' eyes seem brighter today, almost feverishly kind. At midday you help in the herb garden. A woman hums beside you, a lullaby without words. She hands you a sprig of something fragrant. For the chest, she says. Prevents heaviness. You tuck it in your cloak pocket. By afternoon, the boy from your group runs toward you. They're burying something, he whispers, eyes wide. You follow him behind the hall. A small pit, shallow, covered with cloth. The villagers stand around, not mourning, just waiting. Tomas murmurs a prayer. The cloth is lowered in. You can't tell what's beneath it. When they finish, they scatter earth lightly. No tears, no talk, just a rhythm of quiet duty. The woman from your group whispers, "Was that? Not our business," the older man mutters. Weird tidbit. Some untouched villages secretly practiced symbolic burials, burying dolls, clothes, or food instead of bodies. They believed it tricked death into thinking its work was done. That night, Tomas visits your hut. You've been useful, he says. You follow the rhythm. You smile politely. I like the quiet. He studies you. Good. Keep liking it. Then he leaves as silently as he arrived. You sit long after he's gone, listening to the crickets hum under the moonlight. Historians still debate whether such rituals were signs of psychological collapse or creative coping, communities inventing control where none existed. You think maybe it's both. Maybe that's what survival always is. Dawn again. Same light, same birds, same careful serenity. You'd think repetition brings peace, but here it feels more like hypnosis. You join the morning washing. The water's colder today. Tomas stands nearby, watching everyone dip their hands and whisper the same rhyme. The woman beside you trembles slightly. Her lips are pale. You all right? You whisper. She nods too quickly. Didn't sleep. You glance at Tomas, he's watching her now. At breakfast, she's missing. No one mentions it. The boy asks, "Where's she gone?" Tomas smiles gently. "She's resting." The older man grips your arm under the table, a silent warning not to ask further. Historical fact. During plague years, many communities quietly exiled the sick or even those suspected of illness, disguising the act as sending them to rest. It was mercy phrased as kindness. The air feels heavier all day. Work continues as it always does, but there's a subtle stiffness in how people move, a rhythm missing one heartbeat. At dusk, you walk near the stream again. The cloth strips on the fence flutter softly. You notice one new strip, white, fresh, tied to recently. The boy follows you. "They said she went to the mountain," he says. "Where's that?" You glance toward the valley's edge. Hills rise there, mist curling around them like the hem of a sleeping giant's robe. "Far," you say. He nods. "Do people come back?" You pause. "I don't know." Weird tidbit. Some plague-era communities built resting sheds at the edges of valleys, small huts where the sick were left with food and prayers. Some were later mistaken for shrines, which historians only recognize centuries afterward by the presence of bones beneath. You dream that night of walking to that mountain. The stream follows you, whispering, "Keep the rhythm." When you wake, dawn looks identical to the day before, but you're certain something's shifted. Maybe the sound of the bells was too faint this morning. Maybe there's one fewer bird. Maybe you're starting to count what's missing instead of what's left. Historians still debate how isolation changes the human sense of time, whether repetition heals or erases. You lie back, staring at the rafters. The boy snores softly. The older man mutters in his sleep. You whisper to yourself, "Don't break the rhythm." Outside, the bells ring once. Low, distant, and slightly out of tune. You wake in the middle of the night. The valley, usually so serene, feels alert. You sit up slowly. The moon is high, milky white, glinting off the stream like spilled mercury. Somewhere, faint singing drifts through the air. Not the calm communal hymn of evenings past, but something thinner, solitary, almost pleading. You step outside. A single torch glows near the square. Tomas stands beside it, facing 3 villagers. They're whispering urgently. You stay in the shadows, watching. One of the villagers holds a bundle, a piece of fabric, heavy with something unseen. Tomas nods once. The others carry the bundle toward the forest path. You glance at the older man beside you. He's awake too, standing silently by his doorway. "Don't ask," he whispers. You both watch until the torchlight disappears into the trees. The singing stops. The silence that follows is sharp enough to cut through thought. Historical fact. In plague years, night burials became common practice, not from superstition but exhaustion. Fewer mourners, less attention, fewer questions. The world learned to grieve quietly. The next morning, the bells don't ring. Instead, the villagers gather in the square, heads bowed. Tomas speaks softly. "We've removed danger from among us. The air will be clear again." You hear murmurs of agreement, obedient ones. The boy tugs your sleeve. "What danger?" "Bad dreams," Tomas says, overhearing. "Sometimes dreams bring sickness." He smiles, kindly enough that you almost believe him. You notice, however, that the hut beside yours, the one that used to smell faintly of lavender, is now empty. Weird tidbit. Certain 14th century chroniclers described dream laws, unverified decrees forbidding people from speaking nightmares aloud. on the theory that imagined illness could manifest as real plague. That evening, you're asked to lead the washing ritual. Tomas says it's an honor. You stand by the stream, cupping cold water, repeating the words the others whisper. Clean in the body, clean in the breath, clean in the sleep. For a moment, you feel the hypnotic calm of it, the illusion of safety so perfect it almost becomes true. Historians still debate whether these enclosed communities genuinely thrived longer or simply delayed the inevitable by living in ritualized denial. You stare into the water, watching your reflection ripple. It looks steady, obedient, harmless. Then you blink, and for a heartbeat, the reflection doesn't blink back. Morning comes too softly. The valley seems even quieter than usual. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that hums just beneath hearing, like a held breath. The boy is gone when you wake. His blanket folded neatly, his wooden toy frog left on the bed. You rush outside. People are already working in the fields, calm, unbothered. Tomas sees you. He's gone to the mountain, he says gently. The words sound rehearsed. You glance at the older man. His jaw tightens. That's 3 days in a row, he mutters. You ask Tomas, why do the healthy go too? Because the mountain asks for balance, he says. He says it like it's the most obvious truth in the world. Historical fact. Some remote plague communities invented balancing rituals, sending volunteers or chosen individuals into isolation to restore purity. There's no proof these rituals worked, but they reflected an early sense of communal sacrifice. You look toward the valley's edge. Mist hides the mountain entirely. That evening, no songs are sung. The stream murmurs louder than before, as though compensating for the missing voices. Weird tidbit. A few medieval letters mention valleys where water was said to speak for the people, rippling louder when death was near, quieter when all was well. Modern scholars suspect it was a poetic exaggeration. Probably. You sit beside the older man by the fire. We should leave, he says. Now, while they're still pretending it's paradise. You nod, though even the idea of movement feels strange now. The rhythm of this place has seeped into your bones. As if on cue, Tomas approaches. You'll stay, he says. Everyone stays. It isn't a threat. More like a bedtime story delivered in reverse. Historians still debate whether these enclaves collapsed suddenly or simply faded, whether one day someone just stopped singing and everyone else followed. When night comes, you dream again of the mountain. The mist parts. You see faint shapes, figures standing still as if waiting for something. They're too far to recognize. But one of them might be a child holding a small wooden frog. You wake with your heart quiet but your hands trembling. Outside, the valley glows with candlelight. Every door is open, every window shining softly. A village pretending to be its own dawn. You whisper, "Don't break the rhythm," but you already have. The next morning, the valley smells of rain. Not fresh rain, not the clean, silver kind, but the heavy, earthy scent of wet wood and old stone. The sort of rain that remembers everything it's ever fallen on. You sit by your door, watching the stream swell. It carries small white petals downstream, as if something unseen has bloomed and let go overnight. The older man joins you. "It's time," he says. You nod. The two of you walk the path toward the fields. Every face you pass smiles the same faint, tired smile, as if carved from the same piece of wood. Even the goats seem quieter, which is never a good sign. Tomas finds you before you reach the gate. "Going somewhere?" His tone is still polite, but there's steel under it now. You answer gently, just walking. The boy's toy washed downstream. I thought I'd find it. He studies your face for too long. Then he nods. The stream keeps what it needs, he says. Be grateful for what it returns. You smile, bow your head, keep walking. Historical fact. Isolationist plague villages often developed inward codes, their own sayings, proverbs, or small mythologies that blurred religion and rule. Some were so self-contained that outsiders later couldn't tell faith from law. You follow the stream's bend. The valley behind you hums faintly with its routines. Buckets, broom bristles, distant song. Every sound carries like it's being listened to. You and the older man don't speak until the hill hides you from sight. North Ridge, he says. There's a gap in the cliffs. I saw it days ago. Will the others follow? You ask. If they can still imagine elsewhere. He says, maybe. The walk is long, damp, and too quiet. Even the birds seem to have joined the valley's silence pact. By noon you find the ridge, steep, slick with moss. The older man starts climbing. You follow every step, a small rebellion against rhythm. Halfway up, you hear it, the faint, familiar ring of bells. But this time they're not gentle. They sound urgent, frantic. Weird tidbit. In several 14th century Swiss and Italian settlements, bells were used as alarm signals when someone broke isolation, not to summon help, but to warn others of a breach in purity. The sound echoes through the mist. They know, you say. The older man nods grimly. Then we climb faster. Below, the valley looks small, too perfect to be real, like a painting hung in the wrong light. Historians still debate whether these self-protected valleys fell to disease or imploded from fear, whether it was pestilence or purity that finished them. You don't look back again until the bells stop. When they do, the silence that follows feels bigger than sky. The ridge flattens at last. You reach a high plateau, scrub grass, pale stones, air sharp with altitude. The valley below is hidden now, swallowed by fog. You almost miss it, which is unsettling in its own way. The older man drops his pack and exhales. You did it, he says. You actually broke their rhythm. You half smile. Feels wrong, doesn't it? He nods. Like stepping off a moving prayer. You sit together, watching clouds drag their shadows across the ground. The quiet up here is cleaner, less disciplined, more wild. You can hear your heartbeat again, unmeasured. For the first time in weeks, you feel something like freedom, though it's thin and strange, like drinking cold air through cracked glass. After a while, you build a small fire. The flames crackle with satisfying imperfection. Historical fact. Many who fled plague zones never made it far, surviving as wanderers or wild men, later mythologized in folklore as hermits touched by divine endurance. You chew dried herbs, taste salt and ash, and realize that survival might be lonelier than dying in company. Below, faintly, you hear the valley's song again, distant, distorted, like a lullaby underwater. The older man shakes his head. They're still pretending. Maybe that's their way out, you say. He doesn't answer. Weird tidbit. Some medieval monks believed that repeating the same chant for too long could erase memory, that devotion could overwrite the self. You stare into the fire. Maybe forgetting is the last step to peace. He laughs softly. Maybe, but I'd rather remember who I was. The wind picks up. The air smells cleaner here, almost alpine. Historians still debate whether survivors like you, those who escaped in closed communities, truly lived longer or simply traded one kind of silence for another. As the night deepens, you both lie down under thin blankets. The stars look like tiny holes poked through a painted sky. The fire hisses low. The mist below begins to shift, slow, deliberate, like something breathing. You whisper almost to yourself, "If we live through this, maybe we'll build a quieter valley. One that remembers it's supposed to end." The older man smiles faintly in the dark. "Now that," he says, "sounds like a rhythm worth keeping." The first morning outside, the valley feels like waking from a long-held breath. The air is colder, wilder, full of scents that haven't been tamed. Pine resin, wet stone, the ghost of smoke somewhere very far away. You and the older man walk until the sun finally burns through the fog. The landscape opens. Hills folding into more hills, patches of dark forest, the distant suggestion of ruined towers. For the first time in months, you don't hear bells. And somehow that silence feels wrong too. You find a path, more a suggestion than a road, winding toward the lowlands. Grass grows between the stones. Someone once walked this way often enough to leave memory behind. You follow it. By afternoon, you reach a burned-out cottage. The walls still stand, blackened but proud. Inside, the air smells of rain and wood ash. The older man sets down his pack. "It'll do," he says. You nod. "Do for what?" "For not dying today." You laugh quietly, the sound foreign in your own throat. Historical fact. After the first plague waves, many survivors resettled abandoned farmsteads, a process called claiming the quiet. They left the cities and lived among ghosts and overgrowth. You sweep out the ash, gather branches, rebuild a small hearth. The simple acts feel monumental. Outside, the wind combs through the grass like it's trying to remember a song. That night, you light your first honest fire in months. No bells, no chants, no rules. Just warmth and wood and breath. The older man hums tunelessly. "Do you think they're still alive down there?" You stir the fire. "If they are, they'll never know it." He nods. "That's one kind of peace, I suppose." Weird tidbit. One chronicler described ghost villages that continued to follow ritual schedules long after plague emptied them. Bells ringing from wind alone, doors creaking open and shut as if in habit. You look out the door. The night sky is vast, scattered with stars sharp as frost. Somewhere below, unseen, the valley probably hums on, still pretending the rhythm never broke. Historians still debate whether survival was triumph or curse in the plague years, whether those who lived simply inherited emptiness. You lean against the wall, eyes half closed. The fire crackles, the world breathes again, and for once, you let your thoughts wander freely, unmeasured, unchanted, untamed. Days pass, or maybe weeks. Time up here is strange again, but in a gentler way. The rhythm is yours now. You wake with the sun, gather water, boil herbs, mend things that don't matter much but feel important anyway. The older man teaches you how to make traps, how to recognize edible roots, how to listen to silence without mistaking it for safety. At night you talk, sometimes about the valley, sometimes about the world before all this. Taverns, festivals, the sound of too many people talking over one another. You realize you miss the noise more than the faces. One afternoon, while searching for firewood, you find a small shrine by the path, weathered, moss-covered, leaning like it's tired of standing. A wooden carving of a saint stares out, eyes faded to nothing. Someone left a bowl of stones at its base, each one marked with a line. You take one, trace the mark. The stone feels warm. Historical fact. During and after the plague, people left inscribed stones at way shrines memory markers for the lost. The lines represented days survived, prayers answered, or people remembered. You carry it back to the cottage. Set it by the fire. The older man nods. You're keeping count now? Just marking proof, you say, that we existed. He smiles faintly. That's all history is, really. Scratches that outlive the scratching. That night you dream of the valley again. Not in fear this time, but as if it's become something softer. You see the stream winding endlessly, bells hanging still, the air glowing faintly like the inside of a closed eyelid. When you wake, the wind outside sounds almost like singing. Weird tidbit. Some post-plague legends spoke of echo valleys, places said to hum the prayers of the dead forever, replaying the sounds of vanished lives. You listen for a long time. It's hard to tell if you're hearing the wind or memory. Historians still debate whether such legends were metaphorical or simply the natural sound of grief echoing in stone. You whisper, "Keep the rhythm?" But this time, you mean something different. Not obedience, not denial, just continuity, the rhythm of breathing, of staying. The older man smiles in his sleep, as if he's dreaming of the same sound. Outside, the dawn rises slow and forgiving, the first true dawn that belongs only to you. The thaw begins subtly. You notice it first in the trees, small buds like punctuation marks on the edge of winter's sentence. Then, in the streams, thin threads of water threading through ice, whispering in languages that have nothing to do with plague or prayer. You walk farther each day now. The older man's limp slows him down, but he doesn't mind. It's good, he says, to make the ground remember us. You smile. Do you think the ground forgets? He looks down at his boots. Only when we stop walking. You reach the edge of a wide meadow. The grass is short and new. The world feels freshly unrolled. You can almost imagine this was always a quiet place, untouched by all that came before. But then, you spot smoke on the horizon. Thin, gray, deliberate. Someone else is alive. Historical fact. After plague depopulation, scattered survivors often followed the traces of cooking smoke to find others. It was the only reliable sign of human presence in an emptied landscape. The older man eyes it warily. Could be bandits. Could be bakers, you offer. He chuckles. Same thing half the time. You decide to approach at dusk, when the world feels less sharp. By the time you reach the source, the sun has collapsed behind the hills. The smoke rises from a crude shelter, woven branches, patched hides, and, astonishingly, laughter. A woman and a boy sit by a fire. They look up as you appear, startled but not afraid. You raise your hand. Evening, you say softly, as though sound might still break the world. They nod. The woman gestures toward the fire. There's room. Strange, how quickly the human heart remembers how to gather. You sit. The boy passes you bread. It's coarse but warm. You could cry, but you don't. Weird tidbit. Survivors of the Black Death often described the first shared meal with strangers as the true resurrection. Eating bread with another living person meant you had rejoined the world. The woman asks, "Where did you come from?" You look toward the horizon, toward a valley that no longer feels real. "Down there," you say, "where it was too quiet." She nods like she understands exactly what you mean. Historians still debate whether the new communities that formed after the plague were born from necessity or hope. But as you pass the bread back and watch the firelight move across unfamiliar faces, you realize it doesn't matter much. Survival always builds itself from both. By spring, the hills bloom with tiny blue flowers. The woman and her son travel with you and the old man now. For people, it feels like abundance. You camp by streams, trade herbs for stories, and map the world by the sound of birds instead of bells. The boy laughs easily. He finds beauty in absurd things. A beetle rolling a pebble, the pattern of frost that looks like feathers. You envy that kind of wonder. One evening, as you rest by a half-ruined bridge, you spot something carved into the stone. A circle within a circle. It's faint, weathered, an old symbol of the physicians who once treated plague patients. Historical fact: physicians in plague-era Europe sometimes carved or painted circles as talismans of protection, symbols of containment and continuity. They believed the world itself was a body, and if the wound could be closed, it could heal. You trace the mark. It worked, I think, you say softly. The woman tilts her head. Did it? You smile. We're here, aren't we? She laughs, tired but sincere. I suppose that counts. That night, the four of you sit close around the fire. The air smells like pine and smoke and almost summer. The old man begins humming again, that same tuneless melody he used to fill the silence. This time, the boy hums along. It becomes something like harmony. Weird tidbit. Some chroniclers claimed that after the plague, new songs appeared out of nowhere. Tunes that no one remembered composing, as if grief itself had learned to sing. You close your eyes, listening to the rhythm of breath and crackling wood. Historians still debate whether such songs truly existed, or whether people simply needed to believe the world could create beauty on its own again. You whisper into the night, keep the rhythm, not the old rhythm, not the endless bells or the chanting of rules, but the soft, steady pulse of being alive, here, now, together. The fire fades low, the stars gather like quiet witnesses, and you realize that maybe survival isn't about outlasting the past. It's about learning how to dream again without fear. You reach the sea at last, not the grand, storm-racked ocean of songs and trade, but a gentler one, gray and slow, like a mirror left out too long. The horizon folds itself neatly into mist. You stand at the edge of the world, your boots sinking into wet sand. The waves are lazy, their foam tracing fragile lace across the shore. No one speaks for a long time. The woman holds her son's hand. The older man squints toward the water, perhaps remembering the years when ships carried goods and gossip instead of silence. A piece of driftwood rolls to your feet. You pick it up and carve a mark. Not a name, just a line. Proof again that you were here. Historical fact. After the Black Death, many survivors performed quiet rituals of remembrance by water, throwing pebbles, carving marks, whispering the names of the gone. Water symbolized purification and passage. You sit down on a rock, let the salt wind comb your hair. The smell reminds you of medicine, of distance, of something larger than the ruins you've walked through. Do you think, the boy asks, the world will be normal again? You smile faintly. I think it'll be different. He frowns. Is that bad? No, you say. Just new. The woman sighs. I used to think normal was the point. Now I think surviving is. You nod. And sleeping through the bad parts. That earns a laugh. The sea breeze catches it and carries it off. Weird tidbit. Some ports after the plague had laughing laws. Orders that each morning, survivors should gather to tell one joke or funny story aloud, believing laughter could drive away lingering sickness. You try to imagine it, a whole town forced to be cheerful by decree. The thought alone feels like medicine. Historians still debate whether these rituals worked or were simply another kind of prayer. Less to the heavens, more to the heart. You walk a little farther along the shore until you find a small cave half hidden by reeds. The tide's whisper fills it. You know without deciding that this will be your resting place tonight. You light a small fire, enough to paint gold against the stone. Outside, the waves move in and out, unbothered by human memory. And for the first time in years, you feel truly safe enough to sleep. The morning comes softly, so softly you almost miss it. You wake to light spilling into the cave like a sigh. The tide has receded, leaving patterns in the sand, delicate, temporary maps drawn by water and erased by time. You stretch, yawn, and listen. The others are still asleep. Their breathing syncs with the rhythm of the waves. For a while, you just sit there watching the world exist. No orders, no alarms, no reason to hurry. You realize, with a strange mix of pride and melancholy, that you've survived everything you were never supposed to. Historical fact: population recovery after the plague took more than a century in some regions. But life, somehow, never stopped. Wheat grew again. Markets reopened. Bells rang softer this time. You step outside the cave and feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. The salt stings, but gently. The sky above is wide enough for forgiveness. Weird tidbit. One chronicler claimed that after the plague, people slept longer than ever, 10, even 12 hours, as if the world itself needed to catch up on lost dreams. You smile. Reasonable, you murmur. Historians still debate whether that story is true, but then again you think truth isn't always the point. Rest is. You walk to the water's edge and drop one last stone into the sea. No prayer, no words, just the quiet sound of something small sinking into something endless. The older man joins you. "Well," he says, "I suppose this is what comes next." You nod. "What does?" He shrugs. "Whatever we can build." Slowly, you watch the ripples spread out, vanishing before they reach the horizon. Feels right. The woman wakes, the boy stretches. Someone laughs, small and honest, like dawn itself. The day begins, and for the first time it feels deserved. So now you rest. The sea hums its low lullaby, the kind that's older than language. Your body softens into the rhythm of it, the in, the out, the quiet miracle of breath continuing. The past drifts farther away with each wave. The bells are gone. The chants are gone. Even the fear has lost its edges. All that's left is this moment. Light, salt, warmth. You survived a century that nearly forgot how to dream. You walked through silence and ash and found something still worth singing about. Even if that song is no more than wind through broken doors, or laughter in a ruined field. Maybe survival isn't victory. Maybe it's just persistence with grace. The slow agreement between body and soul that says, we go on. You sit by the shore until the waves sound like breathing, and breathing sounds like peace. Your eyelids grow heavy. The air cools, then settles soft as sleep itself. If you could see yourself now, soothed, still, a small piece of a world finally quiet, you might even smile. You've done enough. The sea keeps whispering. The sky keeps dimming. The story keeps existing without needing to be told. Let the rhythm carry you. You can rest now. You've survived.